And fresh off the debate on Capitol Hill, Austin area Republican Congressman Roger Williams joining us now. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I know it's been a very busy couple of days. I wanted to start on this DACA deal. The House Majority Whip warning today that your chamber made no such promise that a deal would be reached on this by February 8th. What's your take on how quickly this can be done if the Senate passes something over?
Well, he's right. We didn't say we would take it up by March 8th, but in reality, we need to begin to address this matter. We need to get ourselves back on a financial course, but we need to begin to address DACA and those here. But it's a separate issue, not to be tied in with a budget issue like we just saw last week in Washington. It held the CR up and kept people from being funded.
What do you want to see with border security, with Dreamers, on these deals being made?
Well, we've got 800,000 men and women here that came over. We know their story, some good, some not so good, frankly, but I want to see border security first. And what I mean by that is not necessarily a wall that goes from one end to the other, but border security, in my mind, I've always talked about it could be brick and mortar, but it's also technology. It's also boots on the ground, which I think is the best. We need more border patrol on the border, but we need to begin to secure this border. Then we need to get people coming through the ports of entry, not between the ports of entry. Then we need to identify who's here, and then we address the issue with those that are here.
Do you want that to be separate bills, separate legislation?
Well, I think it needs to be a separate legislation. What are we going to do? I mean, right now, these people have broken the law. We are a land of laws. We've got to address that. And we're compassionate, too. I mean, we're not going to, it's impossible to have everybody go back home, but we've got to address it. So secure the border first. Then let's begin to talk about work visas. Let's begin to talk about, I can tell you right now, we have to do something with chain migration. We have to do something with the lottery. 50,000 people, the lottery in many cases don't even know that they're accepted to come in here. Those are the kind of things we need to address, sanctuary cities and so forth.
Senator Cornyn also making mention of Harvey funding, and the Senate also indicating that they'll get to work on this within this legislative log jam, so to speak. The House has passed an $81 billion disaster aid bill sitting in the Senate. What's your message to senators on this?
Well, my message to senators is let's react. We've got people suffering, not only in Texas, but Puerto Rico, Florida, some in Louisiana. And we did do our due diligence out of the House. It needs to go to the Senate. They need to address it. I mean, there's people hurting, for crying out loud, and we need to act, and we need to get the funding to them so they can rebuild their lives in the states.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you see this being helpful to Texans specifically in getting this passed?
It's going to be very helpful,
quickly.
And I want to say that the state legislatures and Governor Abbott have done a really good job in addressing the needs and answering questions that they needed to answer on why, what, and where. But the bottom line is we had this huge catastrophe. Texas is hurting, and the Senate needs to get on with it, and let's get some funding down here.
You represent the Fort Hood area. What did the government shutdown mean for military workers there? Well,
it was not good. I mean, we should never shut down the government and use our soldiers as part of the ploy. I was down there today, had a great visit with the soldiers. Their attitude is great. I mean, they're the greatest fighting force we have. But a shutdown is a tragedy for the military. I mean, they no longer get their pay. We've got men and women in foxholes, and we're not paying them. We've got people that, like everybody, has to pay the car payment, have to pay a house payment. What do? So this was not the right thing to do, and I will always do what I can, as we all would, to keep the military from being in this kind of position. But you lose training.
Yeah.
And in a time where we need military, we don't need to be sending a message, we want you to fight, but we're not going to pay you.
Right. Getting a long-term funding bill done, a deal done there,
exactly.
Pushing for that as much as you can. I also wanted to ask you, because you met with Central Texans, including soldiers, veterans, other military, and their families today to discuss the new tax law. How will this affect the military?
Well, the first thing a lot of them told me was thank you for the tax laws. I was very heavily engaged in it. We had the highest tax rates in the world. Now we've got some of the lowest, and in some cases the lowest. We're already seeing what it's doing. But the soldiers today literally thanked me and thanked my colleagues for doing this. They're beginning to see some of it already on their checks. And of course, come February 1st, everybody will begin to see their withholding lowered, which means more money. We're seeing over 100 companies, we all know you've named them during your newscast, that are giving $1,000 bonuses, $2,000 bonuses, raising the minimum wage, and the economy is really percolating. I'm a small business owner, still own a business. Main Street America is humming, and the economy's responding.
You've mentioned that there are still some changes or fixes and different things that need to be done within the tax law. What are those?
Well, I mean, I've had a program called Jumpstart America I've been talking about since I went to Congress in 2012, but I would like to see the capital gains. I think we need to revisit capital gains, and I'd like to see capital gains and dividends come back down to 15%. I would like to see the inheritance tax go away totally. These are some things that I would like to see, and we'll talk about fine-tuning other things. But when you talk about a 21% corporate income tax, when you talk about individual tax rates going down, you talk about repatriation of $3 trillion coming back over from overseas. We're already seeing it coming. That's real money that's going to go back in our economy, and again, like I say, continue to light a fire under it. And it's going to mean more. It's going to mean more taxpayers. It's going to mean lower unemployment, which we're already seeing. So we've sent a really good message to the world that America is going to be the leader in economic issues.
Real quickly, I know that there's been some concern and criticism that this will be better for the top 1% and won't continue some of these tax incentives for lower income people. But I know that you don't have a Republican opponent, but come the general election, how do you see this playing out at the polls?
Well, I think already people are already seeing money in their pocket. We have Nancy Pelosi that says $1,000 is crumbs. $1,000 is not crumbs to somebody that's got $1,000 more. People are getting money in their pocket. They know where they got it. They got it from President Donald Trump and the Republican Congress. So as far as who it helps, I don't know who the rich are when they say it helps. Who are the rich? Is this the person starting their own business, going to hire 2 employees, going to take a risk, trying to get some reward? Now they can do that. So everybody's seeing something. And that's good because we're a consumption-driven nation. When we consume, it means we're spending and we're growing.
Congressman Williams, we will get you back in to talk about this
Good
more.
to be
Thanks
here.
so much
Thank
for being
you.
on the show. We appreciate it. And coming up next,